On a flight to New York, Karoline Leavitt, the young White House press secretary in a sharp navy blazer, suddenly stood up from her first-class seat. Without explanation, she pointed at an elderly man in a worn military coat, his trembling hands clutching an old leather bag, and said to the flight attendant, "Let him take my seat." The passengers were stunned. One protested, "You paid for that seat," but she only smiled, stepping down to the cramped economy section without looking back. A simple gesture. Or was it? What happens when that veteran doesn't just receive a seat, but unveils a secret that silences the entire plane? A story buried since the Gulf War, a thread tying him to the young woman's own family, unbeknownst to her. Can a small act awaken a forgotten legacy? Does kindness have the strength to withstand the skeptical eyes of today's world? Picture the stifling cabin, the engine's low rumble, a child's piercing cry slicing through the air, and the sharp, irritated voice of a middle-aged man in a striped sweater and wire-rimmed glasses. "I need to finish this article before..." The veteran's quiet pain emerged like an old scar laid bare. She slipped on her earpiece, fingers scrolling through notes on her phone, but the noise from economy pulled her out of her private world. "This old man keeps fidgeting. How am I supposed to work?" The man's voice rang out again, harsher this time. Passengers turned their heads, some annoyed, some sympathetic. Something made Karoline pause. Not the noise, but the veteran's vulnerability. This story isn't just about a flight or a seat. It's about how a fleeting moment can unlock a door to the past, to unexpected connections. Does compassion still have a place in today's world? What happens next doesn't just leave the passenger speechless. It might make anyone question themselves. Stay tuned. The story is only beginning. Before the child's cries and the bickering from economy pierced the air, the first-class cabin on the flight to New York was a realm of calm, where Karoline Leavitt reigned like a young queen in her own small kingdom. The soft leather seat cradled her tall, slender frame, the navy blazer clinging sharply to her body, its stiff collar a testament to uncompromising professionalism. In her 20s, she was already the White House press secretary, a rising star in American politics, her blazing eyes enough to make seasoned reporters wary on live TV. Her phone rested in her hand, her thumb flicking across the screen with the speed of someone accustomed to processing hundreds of updates daily, her gaze skimming notes for an upcoming political event in New York, a press conference she knew would be her next battlefield to prove herself. One wireless earbud piped in the steady, low voice of a political podcast analyzing the Trump administration's latest moves, sounds she devoured like a soldier gearing up for war. The space around her blended luxury with subtle tension. Soft light from the window bathed her face, highlighting her sharp features tempered by a youthful glow, a mix that made her both approachable and distant. First-class passengers, from a businessman in a gray suit to a middle-aged woman with a designer bag, stole glances at her. A man with glasses whispered to his wife, "That's Karoline Leavitt. She was on CNN last week." But she paid no mind. Curious stares and hushed murmurs were a part of her life, like the wind brushing past the plane's windows. The earbud wasn't just for listening, it was a shield, warding off unwanted conversations, a trick she'd mastered from her early days in politics, where every word could be a trap. Her phone buzzed incessantly in her blazer pocket, maybe a text from her comms team about a crisis, an email from a superior, or a reminder from her husband to pick her up at the airport. She ignored it all. Right now, she needed absolute focus. The New York event wasn't just a press conference. It was an arena where she'd prove youth wasn't a weakness, but a strength, in a political world filled with aging faces and outdated thinking. She pictured herself at the podium, flashbulbs popping, questions raining down, her calm, cutting responses, her signature. That was her fortress, not the first-class seat, but the perfect control she'd built around herself, a wall no one could breach. Then, the noise from economy seeped through, a child's shrill cry drilled into the air, mingling with the middle-aged man's grumbling, "This old guy keeps moving. How am I supposed to work?" Karoline froze, her finger halting on the screen. She leaned forward, her gaze slicing through the seat gap, taking in the scene. The veteran bowed his head deeper, his shoulders trembling as if trying to vanish, the purple heart glinting faintly under the cabin lights, a quiet sign of forgotten sacrifice. Nearby passengers turned, some sighed in irritation, others in silent pity. Whispers stirred in first class. "What's going on back there?" A man in a red tie murmured. "Pretty shameful." She didn't react immediately. She wasn't one for rash moves. Her eyes scanned the situation with the cool precision of someone who'd faced countless crises. But then a flicker of emotion broke through. Not her usual detachment, but a small tremor, a flame stifled beneath her polished exterior. The veteran's pain wasn't just a sight. It was a crack in her flawless wall. A challenge she didn't yet know would lead her somewhere unexpected. The veteran sat there, shoulders quaking, clutching his worn leather bag as if it were all that remained of a once vibrant life now faded to shadows. The middle-aged man's complaints cut through the air like a blade. "This old guy keeps fidgeting. How am I supposed to work?" Passengers around him turned, some exhaling in frustration, others bowing their heads, but no one spoke up. The veteran dipped his head lower, his voice a shaky whisper. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to bother anyone." That frail, earnest apology drifted like a breeze, drowned by the child's wails and the growing irritation in the cramped cabin. He wasn't the type to draw attention. His military coat was threadbare at the shoulders, loose stitches like scars time couldn't heal. The tiny purple heart on his chest gleamed faintly under the cabin lights, a silent emblem of war wounds and decades of sacrifice no one seemed to recall. His thin, wrinkled hands trembled as they gripped the weathered brown leather bag, the only thing he'd brought aboard. He moved slowly, his steps heavy with the weight of years, yet his eyes held something indefinable, a quiet pride mixed with deep sorrow, as if he'd grown used to being overlooked, left behind. Seated next to the middle-aged man, a journalist with wire-rimmed glasses and a sour expression, no one could have guessed his presence would spark a small clash between two worlds, the fragile patience of the present and the forgotten past he embodied. The journalist kept griping, his voice echoing as if to claim the entire cabin's attention. "I paid for this flight, I need space to work," he snapped, pointing at the veteran. "He should have taken a bus." The words sliced through the air, sharp and merciless, making a few nearby passengers wince, while the child in the back row cried louder, sinking with the rising tension. The veteran shrank into his seat, trying to make himself smaller, the leather bag pressed against his legs like an invisible shield. I don't want to bother anyone," he repeated, his voice hoarse with shame, his cloudy eyes fixed on the floor as if to escape the stares around him. But the journalist didn't relent. Arms crossed, face flushed, he muttered on, "Don't want to bother? Then don't squeeze in here." It wasn't just personal annoyance. It was an accusation, a rejection of the veteran's very existence, as if he were an unworthy burden in this modern world. A young flight attendant, hair tied high, rushed over, holding a small tray as if to mask her unease. "Sir, please calm down, we'll handle it," she said, her voice quivering as she tried to defuse the situation. But the journalist only tightened his arms, eyes blazing. "I didn't pay to put up with this." The child's cries now blended with the sighs of other passengers, forming a chaotic symphony no one wanted to hear. The veteran didn't look up. He just sat there, silent, his frail hands clutching the bag, as if it were the last thread of his dignity. Yet in that silence lay a bigger story waiting to be told, a tale from the days after the Gulf War, when he returned with a wounded leg and a broken heart, when society turned its back on men like him, leaving them to wander in the dark of oblivion. From first class, Karoline Leavitt's gaze remained fixed on the scene, her hands releasing her phone, her usual calm beginning to waver. Whispers rose nearby. "Why doesn't someone do something?" a man in a red tie murmured, "Pretty shameful." But the veteran didn't hear. He sat there, a faint figure amid the crowd, a living symbol of what society had ignored. He didn't know this moment wasn't just a passing annoyance. It was the spark of something greater, a story that would pull him from the shadows into the light. Thanks to a young woman he'd never met before, could his quiet hurt reach someone's heart in this cold world? What happened next would answer that in a way no one on this flight could foresee. The whispers around him, "Why doesn't someone do something?" rippled through the cabin like a small wave, mingling with the child's cries and the young flight attendant's helpless attempts to calm things down. But Karoline didn't wait any longer. A flicker of emotion flashed in her sharp eyes, not impulsiveness, but a quiet, certain decision. like when she faced the toughest questions at the White House podium. She set her phone on her lap, her finger pausing on the screen, then pressed the call button on her armrest. A soft ding cut through the chaos like a clean slash. The flight attendant, hair tied high, hurried over, still clutching her tray as if to hide her nerves. "Yes, Miss Leavitt, what do you need?" she asked, her voice trembling as she recognized the famous passenger. Karoline met her eyes, her tone calm but commanding. "I want to switch seats with the man in the military coat. He should sit here." The whispers in first class erupted instantly, like flames catching wind. A man in a red tie hissed to his wife, "Is she joking? Who does that?" A middle-aged woman with a designer bag raised an eyebrow, skeptical. "You paid for that seat, why give it up?" But Karoline didn't flinch. She stood, her tall, lean frame striking in the navy blazer against the plush surroundings, and with a faint smile, sharp yet not cold, she said, "Some people deserve respect more than I do." The words were soft but firm, like when she faced a crowd at the White House, leaving no room for argument. The attendant blinked, stunned enough to nearly drop her tray. You're sure?" she stammered, disbelief in her voice. Karoline nodded, unwavering, already reaching for her small bag overhead. "Certain. He needs this more than I do," she said, her tone steady as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. First-class passengers murmured louder, some discreetly snapping photos. But she didn't care. She stepped into the aisle, her poise as steady as when she faced TV cameras, though this time it wasn't about defending policy, it was about defending a person. The whispers spread to economy, where the journalist fell silent, his face reddening with embarrassment as eyes turned to him. The attendant rushed to the veteran, bending down to whisper. He looked up, his cloudy eyes glinting with surprise. "She wants to switch with me?" he asked, his voice quaking with disbelief. The attendant nodded. "Yes, sir. She says you should sit in first class." He rose slowly, still clutching his leather bag, his gaze probing Karoline, now standing nearby. "You sure, young lady?" he asked, his tone a mix of doubt and gratitude. Karoline stepped closer, extending her hand, her eyes meeting his, not the press secretary's gaze, but that of someone who truly saw him. "I'm sure," she said, her voice carrying a rare warmth. "Thank you for what you've done. Take my seat." He hesitated, searching her eyes for reluctance, but found only sincerity. He took her hand, his weak but warm grip that of a man who'd lost so much. Karoline turned, heading to his old seat in economy. She sat, her long legs folding into the tight space, her face calm as if nothing had changed. The journalist beside her glanced over, mumbling, "Never seen anyone do that." She gave a faint smile, pulling out her phone to scroll, as if it were just a minor moment in her busy day. But it wasn't small, it was a statement, a spark that set the plane abuzz. Kindness or duty? A spontaneous act or a young politician's calculation? Passengers whispered, "Why'd she do it?" A woman with a pearl necklace muttered, "Probably for attention." But the veteran's eyes, now in first class, told a different story. One Karoline didn't yet know would take her somewhere unexpected, changing everything that followed on this flight. The veteran settled slowly into the plush leather seat, his thin hands resting on the armrests, his worn coat stark against the first-class luxury. The Purple Heart on his chest glimmered under the cabin lights, a quiet reminder of what he'd endured. He gazed out the window, his cloudy eyes reflecting the dim light. Then, as if drawn back to a distant memory, he began to speak. Not to anyone in particular, but to himself, until a woman with curly hair beside him leaned in, her voice gentle. "You okay?" He turned, his cracked lips forming a faint smile. "Fine," he replied, pausing, his hand brushing the metal on his chest. The woman, her eyes warm with genuine curiosity, tilted her head. "You served, didn't you? If it's not too much, I'd love to hear your story." He hesitated, as if the door to his past had been locked too long, but then nodded, his hoarse voice steadying. "It was after the Gulf War," he began, his hands gripping the armrests as if anchoring himself against old pain. "I came back from Desert Storm with a wounded leg and nothing else. My family, they were gone. I wandered New Hampshire, no home, no job, just this bag." He patted the old leather bag beside him, its frayed stitches a testament to harsh years. "I sat outside a little diner, not knowing what tomorrow would bring, just wanting to disappear." Nearby passengers took notice. A man in a checkered shirt set his paper down, leaning over the aisle to listen. The veteran went on, his voice gaining a weight hard to ignore. Then a man stopped. He didn't just give me money. He sat on the curb, right next to me, and listened. Listened to me talk about the war, the days I thought I wouldn't make it. He took me to a motel, paid for a few weeks, then found me work at a lumberyard nearby. He said, "You serve this country, now we take care of you." Not empty words. He gave me hope, something I thought I'd lost forever. The curly-haired woman blinked, her voice trembling. "That's incredible. Who would do that?" The veteran turned, his gaze drifting to economy where Karoline sat. "It was the grandfather of the girl who just gave me her seat," he said, his voice now firm. First class fell silent, the air sucked out of the room. The woman gaped. "You mean Karoline Leavitt's grandfather?" He nodded, touching the Purple Heart as if drawing strength from it. "I didn't know her name then, but I remember him, a local politician in New Hampshire, always fighting for folks like me, forgotten veterans. I never forgot his face, those bright eyes, that warm voice." Whispers spread. The man in the checkered shirt cut in. "That's wild. My dad was a Gulf War vet," he said. "People like that kept him going when he came back." The veteran gave a faint smile. "Yeah, a small gesture can change a life." A young girl in the row ahead turned, eyes shining. "So, Karoline didn't know this when she gave up her seat?" He shook his head. "I don't think so. But when she took my hand and thanked me for what I'd done, it felt like a circle closing. Her family saved me once, and now she's reminding me kindness still exists." The curly-haired woman pressed a hand to her chest, moved. "It's miraculous, like fate." He nodded, his gaze lingering on Karoline, though she couldn't hear from economy. "Fate or not, that girl's got something special, just like her grandfather." The buzz filled first class. An older man whispered to his wife, "This Leavitt girl's more than a TV spokesperson." She nodded. "She's got a real heart." The veteran stopped, stroking his bag as if cradling memories. He sipped water from a glass the attendant brought, his gaze distant but a faint smile on his lips, signaling one thing. Karoline's act wasn't just a seat. It was the recognition he'd waited decades for. But the story didn't end there. When he stood inching down the aisle with the armrests for support, his eyes locked on economy, where Karoline sat. He stopped before her, extending a hand, his hoarse voice steady. "Monsieur Leavitt, I have to thank you." Karoline rose instantly despite the tight space, grasping his hand, a warm grip bridging their generations. "No need," she said softly. "I'm the one thanking you for what you've done." He shook his head, eyes reddening. "Not just the seat. Your family changed my life. Your grandfather saved me when I had nothing. Today, you brought it all back." Karoline blinked rapidly, hiding a swell of emotion. "I just heard from the attendant," she said, her voice catching. "I didn't know he'd done that." He smiled, a wrinkled but warm smile. "He was special, and so are you. You didn't just give me a seat, you showed me kindness. Still matters, closing a circle I thought was gone forever." Nearby passengers went quiet. A mother holding her child wiped a tear. An older man nodded, whispering, "Unbelievable." Scattered applause rose, soft but profound, a shared acknowledgement. Karoline squeezed his hand tighter, her voice trembling. "Thank you for telling me. I'm so glad to meet you." He nodded, then returned to his seat, leaving her with eyes both sad and warm. A timeless bond sparked anew, one she'd never anticipated. When the plane's door opened, cool air rushed in, and passengers rose to grab their bags. But unlike typical flights, no one shoved or hurried. They exchanged glances and smiles as if they'd shared something greater than a journey. A young girl about 20, phone in hand, skipped down the aisle, shouting to a friend, "I got it all on video, posting to X now." Before Karoline could step off, the clip hit social media, captioned, "Karoline Leavitt gives up first-class seat for veteran. You won't believe what happens next. Kindness matters." Within 15 minutes, the 3-minute video capturing her seat swap, the veteran's story, and the applause racked up over 500 shares and thousands of likes. Other passengers posted too. The veteran walking the aisle, Karoline holding his hand, tagged Karoline Leavitt, and veteran respect. A man with a suitcase told his wife, "Gotta tell the guys at work about this." A boy tugged his mom's sleeve. "Mom, is she a superhero?" She laughed. "Not quite, but she did what a superhero would." But the outside world wasn't all smiles and praise. On X, the story morphed into a battleground. One user wrote, "This is why I back Trump. People like Leavitt actually care," with a fist emoji. Another shot back, "Just cheap PR, she knew she was on camera." A rainbow flag account pinned, "Staged, don't fall for it." Supporters fired back, "She didn't know about the camera. Watch the video, it's real 100%. The debate exploded, hundreds of comments piling up, from admiration to suspicion, pushing the video past 10,000 views in an hour. News outlets jumped in, Fox News blared, White House Press Secretary Karoline Leavitt gives up first-class seat for vet. The story behind it will amaze you, hailing her as a compassion icon. A rival site countered, "Leavitt's act, genuine kindness or political stunt?" questioning if it was a ploy to polish the Trump administration's image after recent scandals. Karoline stepped out of the airport, her navy blazer fluttering in the breeze, her phone buzzing nonstop with alerts. She opened X, watching the videos spread, hearing the veteran's voice again. "Her family changed my life." She paused, a faint smile crossing her lips, then scrolled to the comments. The polarization didn't surprise her, she'd seen it all in politics, but lines like, "I cried watching this," or "This is the America I love," made her pause. She thought a moment, then typed fast. "Just the right thing to do, thank our veterans for our freedom, small acts can make big change." The post, seen by her 700,000 followers, sparked a fresh wave. Praise from big accounts, flack from opponents. That night at her hotel, Karoline sat on the bed, video calling her husband. He appeared, hair tousled, grinning. "You okay, social media star?" She gave a soft laugh, finally easing up. "You saw it all, huh?" He nodded. "Our son'll be proud when he's older." She smiled, but her eyes drifted. "It's got me thinking about Grandpa. I didn't know how amazing he was." He nodded, voice gentle. "You're like him, not just today, but how you live." She blinked hard, emotion rising. "I just worry I can't live up to him," he chuckled. "You do, every day." The call ended, and she lay back, staring at the ceiling, her mind swirling with the veteran's tale and her grandfather's legacy. Days later, at the White House podium, Karoline stood, navy blazer crisp, voice steady. "Today, I want to talk about someone I met on that flight, a veteran who gave so much. He reminds us veterans are this country's heart. This isn't about me, it's about what we can do for them, every day in the smallest ways." The room hushed. Then applause broke out, quiet but real. A reporter shouted, "Think this changes how people see you?" She turned, smiling. "I hope it changes how they see our veterans." Then she walked off, leaving the story to echo, not just from the flight, but in a society wrestling with whether kindness is real or just a gimmick. When Karoline stepped out of the White House briefing room, leaving behind the soft applause and her final words about the veteran, "I hope it changes how they see our veterans," the flashbulbs kept popping, but she didn't linger to pose or answer more. Her navy blazer swayed as she strode down the hall, heels clicking steadily on the marble floor, a rhythm of resolve she carried from that fateful flight. The story of the veteran, her grandfather, and the seat swap had spread everywhere, from explosive X-posts and screaming headlines to a mother's whisper to her young son at the airport. She did what a superhero would. But as her office door shut behind her, silence enveloped her, broken only by the faint sigh escaping her lips. She sank into her chair, gazing out the window where the late afternoon light streamed through the panes, and for the first time that day, she let herself sink into thought. Not about politics or public image, but about what this story truly meant to her. It didn't end on the flight or at the podium. It lived on in every social media comment debating whether her act was heartfelt or calculated in the eyes of those who'd seen it, from the curly-haired woman in first class to the boy asking about superheroes. But what lingered deepest wasn't the world's divide, it was the shift within Karoline. Hearing her husband say over video, "You're like him in how you live," she realized giving up her seat wasn't a whim, it was part of the legacy her grandfather left, a value she'd unknowingly carried forward. The veteran, with his Purple Heart and tale of desperate days in New Hampshire, wasn't just a random passenger, he was the face of countless souls who'd sacrificed and been forgotten, and through him, she glimpsed her grandfather, a man she'd only known through her mother's vague stories. But this wasn't just about Karoline or the veteran. It was about everyone who'd witnessed or heard it. That small act, a seat given amid a child's cries and the flight's chaos, posed a bigger question. What's kindness worth in a world where everything's doubted, dissected through lenses of politics or self-interest? The grumbling journalist might now see those around him differently. The girl who posted the video might believe a kind act can ripple further than she thought. And those watching the evening news, hearing the story in the anchor's steady drone, might wonder, in Karoline's shoes, what would they do? As the veteran, how would they feel to be seen after decades in the shadows? The story offered no neat ending. It left an afterglow, a small flame smoldering in each heart. Karoline returned to work, sharp-eyed behind the podium as ever, but now carrying something new, a deep tie to a past she'd never known. The veteran, perhaps back in his modest New Hampshire home, sat by his old leather bag, smiling at the memory of her warm handshake. And those who'd seen it, on the flight, online, or on TV, carried the story into their own lives, each with their own take. Can compassion change anything in a divided world? Can a moment of kindness stand against waves of doubt and critique? No one has a sure answer, but this tale reminds us that small acts, whether questioned or praised, can plant seeds for something greater if someone dares to believe in them. So ask yourself, next time you face a chance to do right, however small, what will you choose? Act from your heart, or let others' eyes decide for you?